Welcome to this class. In the last class, we have shown the basics related to SEM, TEM, and other techniques such as electron channeling contrast imaging, transmission Kikuchi diffraction. Now we will go to the application side. Mostly, I will describe on the structural material side. So in electron microscopy, I'll just briefly let you know that in SEM, we can do the electron backscatter diffraction so that you can get the crystallographic information. You can get the crystal structure analysis. You can get the grain orientation map. This is here I am showing an inverse pole figure map where you can see that different colors corresponds to the different crystal orientations. Okay. In TM, you can perform the conventional transmission electron microscopy. You can do the diffraction analysis. You can identify the phases, phase 1 and phase 2. You can get the orientation relationship between the phases by the conventional diffraction techniques. Also in STEM mode, you can do the high resolution scanning transmission electron microscopy where you can get the contrast related to the atomic columns. You can get the local structural analysis, you can get the interfaces, defects, and you can identify what type of defects or the line defects are present in the sample. So these information are all 2D projection of volume. Okay, and in transmission electron microscopy or SEM, actually you can do the EDS spectroscopy. EDS spectroscopy is nothing but using X-rays. These are used for the quantification of chemical species. And this accuracy depends on the Z number. Higher is the Z number, higher will be the accuracy. EDS spectroscopy is not recommended for the light elements because of the energy resolution. It has an energy resolution about 130 electron volt, where in the low energy light elements, these energy peaks gets overlapped. In TM, you can do the electron energy loss spectroscopy by where you can get the light metal quantification. However, it has a complex spectrum and heavy elements. For the heavy elements, there might be the overlap of the specific edges, and especially in these yield spectrum, you have to get the deconvolution of the peaks. Correct. So atom probe tomography has an advantage over these two techniques. It gets atomic scale 3D compositional analysis. It has an excellent mass resolution with a elemental sensitivity of 10 parts per million, irrespective of the element, and you will get the accurate quantification. More important, you can visualize your specimen in 3 dimensions. If you have some certain features which are having a different compositions. Fine. However, as in atom probe tomography classes, I had told that there might be some reconstruction issues where the major drawbacks are low spatial resolution. This is due to the irregularity of the field evaporation sequence due to the compositional changes and local bonding states. In reconstruction can be distorted. This is due to the predicting 3D electron field distribution is very difficult, especially in the near and the far field. And there are also aberrations related to trajectory, which are related to the local magnification effects and due to local curvature and different precipitate and evaporation field. So there might be the surface migration effects. So these are the major drawbacks in the atom probe tomography. But these drawbacks can be overcome by using the correlative microscopy. What is correlative microscopy? It is nothing but a sample surface. A sample is examined in an electron microscope, either in a scanning electron microscope or the transmission electron microscope, to get both the structural information from macro to atomic scale. Then the same specimen can be field evaporated in an atom probe to get the correlative chemical analysis. Here I am showing an atom probe needle where it is showing a certain features which corresponds to a stacking fault, and you can see the corresponding atom map where you can see that this corresponding uh, fault has a different composition from the matrix. So by correlative microscopy, you will get both structure and chemistry from the same region of interest. You will have a better understanding of the atomic level mechanisms, and also you can improve the APT reconstructions. Correct? This is to overcome the drawbacks related to the atom probe tomography. Fine. Here I am giving a very nice example where there is an EBSD pattern, and this is an inverse pole figure where all the orientation corresponds to the different colors. Especially these are FCC copper, so you will have a red color or 001, blue color and the green color with the 111 and 101. You can pick up a grain. So we picked up a 001 grain, which is a red color. You make an atom probe out of plane sample. You field evaporate it. This is a copper sample which is having a cobalt precipitates. These are coherent, and you can see that along this direction, these map there is a cobalt clustering in the copper matrix. Copper is a green color, a golden color, and the red color is cobalt atoms. In the desorption image, or we can see that the orientation of the needle specimen is near to 001. If you magnify along the z direction, you can actually resolve these atomic planes. Golden color corresponds to copper, green color corresponds to aluminum, while the cobalt is a red color atoms. And you can see that the resolution of these atomic planes, it is almost like a special resolution of the d spacing of 001. And so that you can get the composition of each atomic layer. Fine. So where you can get this cobalt and aluminum concentration on that particular atomic plane. And you can see the cobalt and copper is immiscible. So wherever the cobalt is not present, their copper is almost zero in the in the reconstruction. Fine. So this is another example of an aluminum alloy. And here you can see that uh, HUD image of a TEM where you can see the different contrast related to the aluminum and also the precipitate of copper. And inside the aluminum crystal structure, also you can see the bright atomic columns. These bright atomic columns corresponds to uh, high Z elements such as hafnium and tantalum in the matrix, and this copper has a higher Z than the aluminum. So these bright columns corresponds to the brighter columns corresponds to the copper rich atomic columns. If you see here, this is a zirconium precipitate, rich precipitate in the aluminum matrix. As zirconium is high Z, it shows the brighter columns as compared to the aluminum. Right? And in three dimension, you can see that in the same uh, sample in three dimension, you can see the plate precipitates as a green rich region, and zirconium rich precipitates as the red color regions. So with this introduction, I will just go through the case studies. You know that we are we are surrounded by several engineering materials, especially steels, which are used in the construction, and also these are used as a stainless steel in our daily home appliances. So especially steels are very important for construction for because of the room temperature strength and ductility, and also it has a very high tensile strength. So there are special grade steels which are used for the construction and also for the transport industries. There are certain kind of alloys which are called super alloys. These are high temperature alloys where it can sustain the temperatures ranges from 1000 degrees Celsius to 1500 degrees Celsius. And these are typically used in turbine blade components. In rockets also super alloys are used, and there is a special class of alloys of copper alloys which are very important in the rocket based systems where they used for the applications where high conductivity is required. Lightweight alloys, especially on magnesium and aluminum, these are the main critical alloys which are used for the powertrain applications in automobiles. especially in the engine parts where the temperatures can reach up to 200 to 250 degrees Celsius. So a lot of work is being done on these alloys to improve their high temperature capability up to 250 degrees Celsius. Especially these are used to construct, to make the pistons and piston heads. So these are the main uh, uses of lightweight alloys. And there are other applications of these alloys such as utensils, wiring, electrical wiring, etc. Now, I have gone briefly in this introduction of this class that the importance of correlative microscopy. Here, here I will show you that how we can do these techniques can be used. First, here I am showing you a location. This is a sample surface, and you can see there is a sample feature inside the sample. This is a rafted gamma prime precipitate. We'll talk about this later. But if you identify a sample feature in fib, actually you can mark this with the platinum. Okay, when you mark this platinum deposition with the sample features, then you can lift out this lamellar by using the manipulator, and the platinum deposition by using fib, and you can paste this lamellar on a half cut moly grid. And this half cut moly grid is nothing but the sharp tips are present, and these sharp tips have a certain cross section area about 2 microns, 2 to 3 microns, and there you can actually paste the sample lamella by using the platinum deposition, and you can use the fib ion beam for milling these lamellar samples to a sharp needle specimen. Now, as these sharp needles are attached to the grid, this grid can easily go to the TEM holder where we can do the structural analysis from micro to the atomic scale, and the same grid can be used for the atom probe tomography by using special correlative holders where you can get the structural information. Okay, so what we do, the first thing is, first we need to make the grids which are capable to for the sample holding purpose. Though this is a moly grid, these are cut at the half, and you can see that this is the rough surface of the grid, and this rough surface is electropolished. So you are using a cathode and the anode. Now what you put is this, but cut moly half grid is held by a crocodile lock pin, and another crocodile pin is held with a platinum wire which is having a circular hole, and there is a electrolyte. Usually we use the sodium hydroxide, and due to the surface tension, this electrolyte is hanging inside that particular hole. Now what you do is, this particular grid, by up and down motion, by up and down motion, this rough grid is polished to the sharp needles, smooth needles. And this is the needle which is moly post, where the sample can be pasted by the by using the fib, and can be milled to get the needle specimen with the sample of interest. Okay, now you have a moly grid with the sample. Fine. Now what we do is, this particular moly grid can directly go to the TEM by in the TEM holder where you can get the structural information. Now, this holder can be held in a sample holder like this, which is also used in FIB systems for holding the copper grids, and we made a special correlative holders where which can hold grids, these sample holders, and that can be fit to the puck, that this puck can go to the atom probe tomography, so that we can field evaluate that particular needle specimen for the chemical analysis. Okay, and one more important point is, we can also make the needle specimen from TEM samples. Okay, so if you have a TEM sample, you can carry out the TEM analysis, both the structure, atomic structure, and the microscale analysis. Then By special ion beam methods, you can actually take out that sample region of interest from the TM sample. You can paste on the moly grid or moly grid. Then you can use the ion milling for to sharpen the tip and to make the stacking fault present in the needle specimen or the sample of region of interest. So you can make the needle specimen from TM samples also. So these are the correlative experiments, which briefly I will explain you by several applications related to materials. So here the electron microscopy, here we can do the EBSD to get the grain orientation. You can get the transmission Kikuchi diffraction for a very thin samples, TEM or APT specimens. You can do the control electron channeling contrast imaging. I have briefly introduced this imaging technique, which can be used on the bulk samples to quantify the defects on the surface of any sample or deformed samples. And you can also use for the TM and HR stem analysis, for example, the diffraction and atomic structure. These all samples, if site specific, you can prepare by FIP. So FIP can be used for tip preparation, in-plane lift out, and also the TEM sample preparations. Correct? Once sample is prepared, then this particular sample can be analyzed in an atom probe uh, by field evaporation, especially the site occupancy, composition, and segregation effects. So I will give you the brief examples related to the application to the material science. So these are the different techniques I briefly introduced, which I will not go through again. These are the different techniques and steps we can perform uh, to for a specific purpose of investigation. Okay, we can we can investigate defects, twins, dislocation, stacking faults, grain boundaries. We can see the structure and the chemistry, and these are related to steels, magnetic alloys, aluminum based, cobalt based, and super alloys, magnesium based alloys, where all the mechanical properties are actually critically governed or critically dictated by these microstructural features. Okay, so first I will talk about the use of EBSD with the site-specific sample preparation by FIB and the atom probe tomography. Here you can see, I will give you a site occupancy example. Here you can see there is a CO3 Ti phase. This is a cobalt titanium based superalloy where it exists a gamma prime precipitate which is having a L12 ordered structure. L12 ordered structure is a FCC based ordered structure where cobalt occupies the face-centered positions. Titanium occupies the corner positions. Face-centered position is a half of 0. Titanium is a 0, 0, 0 positions. And you can see that this is a typical cubic structure, and the lattice parameter for CO3Ti is almost 0.36 nanometers. Right? So remember that if this particular plane 001 plane is a mixed plane because it contains both cobalt and titanium atom. But this half plane, this particular plane at half of distance, it is a pure plane of cobalt atoms. And there is a mixed plane. So there is a mixed plane, pure plane, and mixed plane. And you can see that if the number of atoms of cobalt is total number of 3 in a unit cell, while titanium is 1 in the unit cell. So stoichiometrically, these are called CO3Ti phase. Okay. We prepared a sample from a 001 oriented grain. This is a EBSD map, an inverse pole figure where the red corresponds to 001 orientation. Once you field evaporate the needle specimen from that orientation, you can get the gamma and gamma prime. Gamma prime, you can see that the titanium is enriched because it partitions. And at the interface, you can see that you can actually resolve the lattice planes of the cobalt or the CO3Ti phase. Now, in our data analysis during atom probe tomography, I introduced about the spatial distribution maps. This is a very powerful tool. Actually, it can be used to identify the site occupancy of any intermetallic compound at a particular orientation. So just to revise, it is nothing but the average distribution of atoms in a particular crystallographic direction. The reference atom and the vectors are drawn in 3D, and repeat for each reference atom. All vectors are histogrammed in the 3 dimensions. So you will get a spatial distribution maps along a particular direction or along a in 2 dimension in xy dimension. Okay, so here we will construct these spatial distribution maps along the z direction, and z direction is near to the 001. Near to 001 means it is in this particular direction, and these are the 001 planes. Remember the 001 planes, these are the mixed planes, these are the pure planes. If you get the spatial distribution maps of cobalt and titanium along the 001 direction, you can see there is a central peak. There is an appearance of peaks, consecutive peaks at certain distance. Similarly, for titanium also at certain distance, there appears of the peak. Now, if you see the distance, you can see that at 0.18 cobalt appears, again 0.36 cobalt appears, again it will appear at a 0.36 plus 0.18. So at equal intervals of 0.18, you see that there is a presence of cobalt atoms. Now if you see the unit cell, you can see that if you assume this as a zero position, which is having a high, which is having a cobalt here, then at each 0.18 you will see a peak. Correct, at each. So from here to 0.18 there is a cobalt, from here to 0.18 here again there is a cobalt because of the mixed nature. So you will see the cobalt presence at both half of 0 and 0 positions. In the case of titanium, you don't see like this. In the case of titanium, there is no peak at 0.18. Always the peak appears at 0.36, 0.72. It means that the distance between the two titanium atoms, minimum distance, is 0.36. With this, what we infer is titanium occupies the 0 positions, but cobalt occupies both mixed and the pure planes. Correct? So this is how we can actually know the site occupancy of the specific elements. Now, what is the application for the site occupancy? So if you see this particular alloy, if we alloy with the moly X with cobalt 12 titanium, you can see that the moly also goes for the titanium positions, which is at the 0.36 nanometers. Fine. And this is all the present in the mixed plane, means titanium sites. If you add additional chromium and moly together, both chromium and moly goes to the titanium positions, which are 0 positions. Now, if we increase the chromium content, what we see that chromium actually occupies the titanium position, but the moly site occupancy shifts from 0.36 to 0.18. So there is a change in the site occupancy of moly atom with the shifting with the increase of the alloying addition. So it has a direct, the alloying addition has a direct consequence of shifting the site occupancy of any solute atom, either it is in a 0 position to the half 0 positions. Okay, this will have a direct consequence on the lattice parameter of this particular gamma prime, because lattice parameter depends upon the interatomic potentials, correct? The bonding between the two atoms. So if there is a change in the site occupancy, definitely it will have an impact on the lattice parameter of the gamma prime, which is coherent with the gamma phase. So the strain between these two phases will change. And due to the change in strain, there will be a effect on the overall mechanical properties. So one example I will give you on another cobalt alloy, where you can see that this is a cobalt nickel aluminum moly tantalum titanium alloy. And if you increase the chromium content from 2% to the 8%, you can see that the gamma prime morphology changes from cuboidal to the spherical. So definitely there is a change in the local lattice misfit between the gamma and gamma prime. Fine. If you do the spatial distribution maps of the chromium atoms in a gamma prime, you can see that the for two chromium alloy, the chromium occupies all the 0.36 points. 0.36 means these are occupying the 0 positions of the L12 unit cell. However, if you increase the chromium up to 8%, you can see that the lattice site occupancy is also on the 0.18. It means that due to the change in the chromium site occupancy, it is having a direct impact on the lattice parameter of the gamma prime, due to which there is a change in the lattice misfit from plus 0.48 to plus 0.19. It means that the lattice misfit decreases. Due to decrease in the lattice misfit, you can see that there is a change in the morphology. If there is a change in the morphology, this will have a direct impact on the creep properties of this particular alloy, which is high temperature on stress applications. So this is how we can use the site occupancy to correlate to the microstructure obtained, which actually governs the overall creep property of that particular alloy. Now, I will give you an example of site-specific preparation of needle specimen from the grain boundary and use of transmission Kikuchi diffraction, and how atom probe tomography helped us to understand the grain boundary character. Okay, so now this is a combined used with the transmission EBSD, which is a transmission Kikuchi diffraction. As I explained before, these are nothing but you can actually get the Kikuchi pattern from the transmitted inelastic electrons from the specimen after the interaction of the beam with the specimen. Okay, so you can get the pattern. So your here spatial resolution is down to 2 nanometers. Sample is electron transparent, and the diffraction pattern originates from the bottom surface of the sample of a small of same smaller diffraction source volume. Okay, so this is just an example of an orientation map of an aluminium, where you can see that the grain structure inverse pole figure by using the transmission EBSD. So we will use how the transmission Kikuchi can be used in correlation with the other electron microscopy techniques. Okay, so grain boundaries plays a very important role, especially in the corrosion property of this austenitic stainless steel A316. This is an industrial grade steel where the major constituents are chromium, nickel, moly, and minor constituents are silicon, phosphorus, and sulfur. These are excellent properties and corrosion resistance and creep resistance, but at high temperature, these are prone to the intergranular corrosion. And usually the corrosion occurs because of high diffusion of chromium along the grain boundaries, and this chromium depletion occurs along the grain boundaries near to the carbides. And due to the presence of carbides, due to the precipitation of carbides, the localized corrosion increases because these carbides acts as cathode, and the chromium depleted regions acts as anode. So there is a potential difference. So usually the preferentially the corrosion attacks to these boundaries. It was found that some of the CSL boundaries, such as sigma 3 and sigma 1, they are less prone for the corrosion, but it was not always true. Okay, so it was also shown that by increasing the fraction of CSL boundaries, they can prevent carbide precipitation and also provides better corrosion resistance. But it is not so clear evidence. Correct. So now the task is to understand how the grain boundary character is controls the corrosion behavior of these alloys. Okay, so this is the typical microstructure backscattered image, where you can see identify the sigma 5 and sigma 7 type of boundaries in a solutionized condition. And after sensitization, this is nothing but annealing at 700 degrees Celsius for 10 hours. You can see that sigma and sigma 7 boundaries are present. Now, if you do the corrosion, if you put this sample in a 10% volume HF solution, and you can see that at 2 hours there is no change, but at 5 hours you can see that the sigma 7 boundary gets corroded heavily, while sigma 5 boundaries are intact. So there is a change in the corrosion behavior of these two types of boundaries, and definitely it is to do with the grain boundary character. Correct. Now, if you see the fifth cross section of this area, you can see that the sigma 7 boundaries, there are several examples. There are several presence of high amount of chromium and moly. So it hints that the formation of carbides near to the sigma 7 boundaries. But we should understand that why only at the sigma 7 boundary, why not at the sigma 5 boundaries? To do that, we did the correlative analysis. First, to get the composition profile, after solutionized alloy for sigma 5 and sigma 7, what we do is we have lifted out the sample from the sigma 5 in plane lift out, and we did the transmission Kikuchi to to confirm that the obtained boundary at the tip surface needle specimen is a sigma 5 boundary. Okay, so we proved that from TKG it is a sigma 5 boundary. Then the same needle specimen was field evaporated. Interestingly, what we see that at the boundary, you see the moly segregation increases. However, the moly segregation is uniformly distributed across the boundary. This is very important conclusion, which I will explain you later. And if you take the composition profile across this particular boundary, along with the moly, there is a segregation of silicon, carbon, boron, and phosphorus. Okay, and also the chromium, while iron and nickel gets depleted at these sigma 5 boundaries. Similar analysis was done for the sigma 7 boundaries. And interestingly, what we found is that the moly segregation is not homogeneous. The moly segregation happens in a linear way. Like these are, it's like the moly segregation happens in a in a linear fashion. If you take the two-dimensional map of that particular region, you can see that the moly is segregated after each certain intervals. So these we termed as a faceted type of segregation of moly at these facets. Also, there is an increment of the silicon. Now, if you magnify this particular sigma 7 boundary, similarly, we did also for the sensitized samples, and you can see that this at the sigma 7 boundary, these linear features segregated by moly are still intact. And also we have seen that there is a chromium depleted regions. Okay, so there is an enrichment of moly, and there are also chromium rich depleted regions. Now, if you see higher magnification of this sigma 7 boundary, it appears that there is a faceted structure. And in this faceted structure, you can see that the one facet is bright, another facet is dark, one facet is bright. So there is a periodically, there is a bright phase, there is a dark phase, there is a bright phase, there is a dark phase. Correct? And this is not present in the sigma 5 boundaries. Now, further investigation, what we did is we did the EDS mapping. You can see that these bright regions are moly rich. And if you see the crystallography, these are found at as a lavish phases. These are moly rich lavish phases. If you find this dark phase, this particular phase, and if you see in the TM, these are actually carbide phase, which are having a cube on cube relationship with the exterior grain boundary. So you have a two types of phases. The bright phases, which corresponds to lavish phases, because moly is enriched, moly has a higher atomic number. Carbide phases, which are carbon rich, and these are the dark phases. Now, so there is a distinct corrosion behavior between the sigma 5 and the faceted structures. You can see here that this is before corrosion, this is after corrosion. At sigma 7 boundaries, you can see that the corrosion has already started taken place. And you can see that the before corrosion, these facets contains periodic uh, presence of lavish phases and the carbide phases. Right, and if you go for higher magnification, this is clear more, and you can see that in some of the wherever the carbide phase is present at very high magnification, if you increase the exposure to the HF, you can see that there is a severe debonding or severe corrosion of that particular bond. Okay, so precipitation of lavish and carbide phases are linked to the faceting and anisotropic segregation of sigma 7 boundaries. So remember, in atom probe, we see that the moly is segregated in a periodic way, in a faceted way. This segregation of moly leads to the uh, uh, formation of lavish phases at those locations, and wherever the precipitate lean regions are there, there it forms the carbide phases, and due to which there will be electropotential difference and the corrosion takes place at a very high rate. So by texture analysis or texture engineering, actually you can lower these sigma 7 boundaries and you increase the other fraction of sigma or CSL boundaries such that you can minimize the corrosion at the of the steel. So this is how atom probe tomography in conjugation with TKD can be used to identify what is the cause for the corrosion of the steels. I will give you another example of grain boundary. So you can see that this is a superalloy with a gamma gamma prime microstructure. And you can see that if you add a 0.005 boron of that particular composition at the boundary, you can see that the yield strength increases significantly as compared to the boron free by 200 MPa. However, if you increase the boron content beyond point 0 up to 0.04, the strength also reduces. Correct. So the boron something is doing at the grain boundaries. Usually, boron strengthens the grain boundary, but you can use the atom probe tomography to get the details. So this is the transmission Kikuchi diffraction of that particular boundary. You can see that the presence of a boundary between the two orientations. If you take the APT reconstruction, you can see that at the grain boundary, the boron atoms are segregated and it goes up to 0.15 percentage. Okay, along with the cobalt. So due to the enrichment of boron, it strengthens the grain boundary and increases the yield strength of the alloy. Similarly, in another superalloy, where you add a 0.06 boron alloy, the creep properties of this particular alloy increases significantly. Okay, you can see that the other alloys and the creep rate for this particular alloy is much lower as compared to other cobalt based or the nickel based alloys. So the current study, you can see that the density is very low, solvent temperature is high, and these are much better than other tungsten free and tungsten containing alloys. So to find out the reason, you can see there is an atom probe map where you can see these are the gamma prime secondary precipitates. This is the grain boundary which is located as a boron, and boron is homogeneously distributed across the grain boundary, while which is across the gamma prime precipitates and the gamma matrix space. If you take the composition profile across the boundary, you can see that the both niobium and boron are segregated along the grain boundary. So it is a tendency to form niobium boride. But if you cannot increase the boron more than 0.06, if you increase it, then what will happen? All the gamma prime stabilizing elements will be segregated so that you will get less volume fraction of the gamma prime, and boride fraction will increase, which will degrade the creep rate of that particular alloy. Okay, so with this, I will end this class now, and you see that I have given you example of the grain boundaries and how atom probe tomography in conjunction with the transmission Kikuchi diffraction can be used to identify the segregation behavior or the nature of the boundaries that controls the overall creep properties. In the next class, I will cover the electron channeling contrast imaging, use of electron channeling contrast imaging to identify the defects, site-specific preparation, use of conventional high resolution and atom probe to get both structure and chemistry of those defects. And these defects are covered or are produced during the creep deformation. Okay.